Welcome to Lead Today with me, Kalyna. Let's talk leadership. All right. Welcome to the show. I'm really liking this sort of theme here where, I'm taking what I get in coaching sessions from individuals and transposing it into hopefully a format that is useful for you in your career life and just different ways to think about it. Because what I noticed about coaching is really what we're doing is understanding where you are, where you'd like to be, and then usually someone brings a specific scenario where they're feeling challenged and they want to be thinking about and therefore acting differently in that scenario. And so every time, the core thing that I say about coaching, or at least how it can help you, is we really focus on what are the stories you're telling yourself, and then what are the actions you're taking. And so the coaching session works on the stories you're telling yourself. How are you speaking with yourself day in, day out? So one concept that I would love to address in a broad setting, because I get this regularly, is the idea of facts over fiction. So fiction means it doesn't necessarily have to be true, but it's a story, right? And often we sensationalize stories, whether they're our own or others, and it's just the way our mind works, right? We maybe embellish details. There's a concept where you remember the past more favorably than it was, crystallization, I believe that's called. Again, not a therapist here, but certainly loving to explore how certain elements of therapy can inform the coaching process, because obviously if we're dealing with the mind, they're closely related. And so, okay, how you remember your past and how you talk to yourself in your everyday life is your story and the stories you tell yourself repeatedly. So not only is it the narrative that flows through your whole life, right? You kind of have this story if someone says, tell me about your life, and you have hopefully a cohesive story from, when I was a kid, this happened, and you kind of map out these major milestones in your life. Most people have, something from 0 to 5, 6, 7, then from 7 to 11, 12, then they kind of go into high school, kind of 13, teenage years and the trials and tribulations of being a teenager. And then you move into young adulthood, maybe some post-secondary schooling or some sort of experience after high school education, where this kind of coming of age and young adult story. And then you transfer into adulthood and how challenging that is. And then maybe you hit 30 and what's up next. And then people hit kind of their 40s, midlife situation, 50s, really feeling into family and responsibility. And maybe what is this grand mission I'm on? 60, 70, legacy, 80, legacy and generational understanding or passing down wisdom, really wanting to give back to generations of your family or to the world. So hopefully you have this kind of cohesive story that you're building about your life. It helps you to navigate problems. What we're talking about here is the day-to-day, how you're talking to yourself day in, day out, and those stories, the stories that kind of rattle along in your mind, sort of unchecked a lot of the time. And often they feel like you. So I have a previous episode on internal family systems that I really love, Dr. Richard Schwartz's work on this concept. And the way I bring it into coaching is this. If someone comes and they say, you know what, I'm considering leaving my job. I'm not really sure. I need to have that tough conversation of, do I stay or do I go? Are they going to review my compensation? Are they going to look at the work that I'm doing and how I'm delivering? And I've been delivering over and above for a while now. One of the things that needs to happen there is to use the data to make the case for yourself. And some companies have this more established than others. And so if you're at a bigger corporation, the idea of making the case for yourself might be more entrenched in the culture. If you're at a smaller company or one with less defined people processes, maybe this idea of making the case doesn't really exist. But regardless, you have to make the case for yourself and get your manager, supervisors buy-in so that you can get budget for your promotion. And hopefully there's room for it within the way the organization is structured. Depending on where you're at, again, this could be that you're filling in a legacy position and there's a really established, think law firm or accounting firm where you kind of put in your time and hit their milestones, and then you'll reach partner if you continuously deliver over and above for your clients. But then there are more ambiguous hierarchies where, is there a director position in this team or department? Is there kind of an executive level position? How long should I say in a senior role? What is it like to move from manager to senior manager? What are the nuances there? And so that's not always well defined. An industry or role that I see this a lot with is product managers, where, okay, I'm this PM. I've sort of been a PM for a while. There's like associate PM, PM1, PM2, senior PM. What comes after senior PM? I've coached people that are, have been in that role for 2 years, 5 years, 7 years. And there's this kind of wide open sea until, director or head of product, and kind of, because it's not so established, it can be difficult to understand, okay, what is the case I'm making for myself? And then, of course, you have the added layer that other companies are defining roles just differently, right? A senior PM at one company might be different from another. And with any, insert whatever role it is that you're doing, right? It could mean different things. Senior manager, sometimes you're just getting the title because they want you to be quiet and keep doing your job. And so they want to give you a promotion so that you stay. Other times, you're asked way more to be in a role than maybe at another organization. And so am I at the right compensation level here? If I'm doing, a director level role, but you've got me in this senior manager role, what's the distinction? So I think I just had a session about this, which is why I'm kind of top of mind here. But I think in this scenario where do ask for a raise, what's the appropriate next step? I think what needs to happen is this facts over fiction analysis of where you're at and what the next step would be. And so what I mean by facts, I mean data. I mean the job posting that you were hired for, the roles and responsibilities, the success criteria that hopefully you mapped out for your first 90 days, 180 days, the first year. What is it that your performance criteria, whether you use KPIs, OKRs, key performance indicators, or organizational key results. So whatever it is that you're using to hopefully identify, and if you're sitting there going, hang on a minute, I don't have any of these mapped out, then this is certainly the opportunity for you to go in and take the initiative and lead and make sure that the things that you've been working on are tied into things that are growing the organization. And then people will come and say, well, what if my role isn't directly tied to revenue? Okay, that's okay. You have to tie it to whatever it is that you were hired to do. I mean, if they're spending money to have you in the organization, which they are if they're paying you, then you were hired to accomplish a certain role and function. Go back to the job description. They are valuing these responsibilities at a certain price point per hour, per week, whatever the case is. So let's look at this as a researcher and bring in a mindset of curiosity rather than, oh, I need to convince somebody, which then people come and they say, oh, I really want to feel confident. I need to be brave. It's like, if you're going to approach this from a perspective of persuasion, then yes. And there is an element of persuasion perhaps in doing the dance of that discussion. But if you have the facts prepared, it's way easier to feel confident in the fact that you've prepared and then take the results of the discussion and use it as more data to inform your next steps. So we see in what the research figures say for compensation, I do not have a specific study in mind, but I've been reading about this regularly from multiple sources that 2 years, give or take, is the best amount of time to stay at an organization in terms of the compensation that you're going to be afforded. So you're paid more if you make a switch every 2 years than if you were to stay in the same role for 4 years, 6 years, et cetera. So your career in terms of earning capacity will be much more lucrative if you're willing to switch. So what does that mean? It means we've seen that the workforce has changed toward a more gig economy, also freelancer based, contract driven, which means companies are focused on performance. If you're a high performer, that's great for you. If you're not, then maybe watch out. And more importantly, there's a need for transparency in terms of what you're bringing to the table. And this is useful not just for you, but for everybody that you're working with, and how you manage others, how you manage resources. And quite frankly, I think every company should be doing this for their employees for their long haul career development. Why? Because whether you stay with the company and you get that promotion you want, that raise you want, or you make your next move, having a document showing all the results that you've generated in a role will only support you. It'll support you adding to your resume as to what it is you've been doing the past few years. And it'll help you to speak toward that experience in job interviews or meetings, in a raise discussion, right? Or negotiation. You can't go wrong by having a document that lays out the results you're getting. I know for not just top performers, high performers, but everyone, I mean, the admin of that might not sound fun. And I do understand. But if you can get into the habit of one document, let's say per one document or one spreadsheet, however you want to organize this, the tool does not matter. I say this repeatedly as well. Oh, what's the best tool? The best tool is the tool that you'll use. That's the best tool. So I don't care if you're on Notion or Sheets or Excel, Word, the tool does not matter. The utilization of the tool matters. So make sure you pick a tool to track this in that you will use, and then track it. Every new project you get, make sure you have the information at hand. People that come and they say, oh, I don't know if I'm, if I'm getting ahead in this role, I don't know if I'm meeting the criteria. If you don't know if you're being successful or not in your role, then you have not defined the correct success criteria. They're not clear enough. And that's a problem for you and the organization, because if the organization doesn't know what you're bringing to the table, you will be the first one cut. So make sure you know, and they know exactly the benefit that you're bringing their company, right? Ambiguity is not good. When you have some things that are uncertain, yes, you can slide through the cracks, and that's good for somebody that's not paying attention or not really trying in their role. But if you want a promotion, to me, that says you're motivated and you want to be at the next level, continue to learn and grow, make a bigger impact, maybe be a more strategic thinker or manager level, or maybe you just want to grow in your area of expertise. Regardless, you're committed to your craft. And so be committed to tracking what it is that you're producing. Doesn't have to be on a day-to-day basis, right? But again, if you're starting a new project, if there's something that you're managing, if there's an initiative that you take on, and if you're doing this in retrospect, then I get that it's a little bit harder, but totally worth it for when you need to make the case for yourself for this next move. So let's say you have the discussion, right? Okay, so you do the prep work, which is the facts. Gather the facts over fiction. Don't create the story that this is the reorg, the recession, the economy. People come in and talk to me about things that are outside of their control. This is not about the economy. This is about, are you delivering value? And value will trump the economy. Now, granted, certain things are more valuable in boom times than bust times, and that's something to acknowledge, right? But you've got to make yourself bulletproof so that you can move. If you need to move industries, your role is still going to be useful in an industry that's in boom times, right? Like if people were to say, okay, right now we're in a recession and certain industries are floundering and I can't get a job. It's like, okay, so are you willing to look outside your industry then? Because, and if not completely outside, then something adjacent. How can you be in a part of your industry that is flourishing? Because in boom or bust times, there are certain parts of every industry that flourish in the downfall. And so you've got to not necessarily time the market, but if you're in a position where you've been laid off, then you've got to capitalize on the timing of the market when that's the position you're in. So, okay, you've had the conversation and you've prepared all your facts, and you show up and you say, okay, look, this is my performance review time, or we're reviewing my compensation, or I'm here to ask for a raise. Well, make sure you justify it, right? And so that's the case. Okay, here's what I'm being paid. Here's what the role says that I'm in. Here are the projects, initiatives, results that I am managing or executing on that are above and beyond where they're delivering 10x value for you for the past 6 months or 12 months, 3 months. I mean, if you can prove to me that you're delivering value above and beyond what I'm paying you in the role that you're in, and you're on track to even deliver more or are willing to handle more or somehow finding a way to create more value in your role, then it's only clear, it's only right for me to increase your compensation, right? And so if you show me a case, if you give me the evidence and I say to you, oh yeah, that's nice, let's talk about it in 6 months, or yeah, that sounds really important, we can, think about that down the road. If I'm pushing the can down the road, if I'm not willing to create a plan with you, then the reality is either I don't have budget for it, I don't see you in that role, combination of both, the department's not as important or high priority, or maybe you're not demonstrating the value to me and I'm not willing to tell you that. So, I mean, regardless, for you, right, if you can understand your supervisor's core motivations, great. But if you can't, still the fact that you can get a read on, okay, this person sees that I have the value that I've delivered and they're on board to support me to get to the next role and make the case for me, and they make that known over time, great. Then it's absolutely a worthwhile partnership for you to continue to track your results, show your progress. And again, ideally, you're doing this when you start in a role so that you have very clear success criteria. You know what's being expected of you so that you're not in a position of being in a role for a year, year and a half, and then saying, oh, I need to convince them to give me a bonus or give me a raise or promote me, right? You should, that should be a discussion of, look, this is where I'm aiming at in the next year and a half. So I'm building out a document so that I can track all the projects I'm on and really make sure that I'm doing everything that I need to be doing to be operating at the next level and executing on this current level. And then you're checking in as you go through the role. And then when you're having those monthly one-on-ones with your manager, or if they do like performance coaching, depends how the company structures it, but whoever it is, I mean, you're having one-on-ones at some point with your supervisor. And whenever that cadence is, that is the opportunity for you to show up prepared and you to be in the driver's seat, because this is your career. And nobody, I get people as well coming in and blaming their managers. My manager doesn't have a performance plan for me. My manager doesn't have a set track for me, or they're not really helping me develop. It's like, yeah, okay, the manager has a certain responsibility up to a point, but it's your career. So the only person that's fully responsible for this is you. And that's a really tough thing to hear maybe, but that's the truth. And it gives you a lot more control than if you have to put it in your manager's hands. This goes straight back to the series that I talked about with Carl Jung and the undiscovered self. It's exactly the same thing. Put the area of control to the individual to take responsibility for it. So don't give your career up to the economy, to the company you're at, to the industry you're in, to the manager that is managing you. Don't put the responsibility anywhere else other than you. That takes a dose of courage, yes, but it feels way, way better than to feel like a victim of your circumstances. Because the people that thrive in their careers do not let circumstances dictate their ability to capitalize on the situation. They take the situation and they make it into an opportunity. They find the opportunity within any circumstance. And so this is what we're aiming at with this. Use the facts of your performance to make the case for yourself and build it as if you were a lawyer going to trial with all the evidence that is at your disposal so that you can go ahead and make the case. And that means also maybe company data from your company, other people, Glassdoor data, other salary data from your internal company, but also competitors. Look at the compensation at other companies, look at their job role and the description and see what they're expecting of that senior level manager or director level, VP level. Look at what they're expecting of that level and see how it is that you're executing on that. Take that document of the projects that you've worked on and all the things you've executed over the past year, 6 months, whatever that cadence is, and say, okay, how does this line up with this job description? And if in your role, you're not being given things that line up, then that's on you to continue to voice to your manager, hey, I'm looking to take things on. Where can I take something on that meets this criteria? And so if you're organized, your manager is going to be way more likely to support you if you can show them, here's the role for the next level up, all the specs, all the criteria that they're looking for at the director level or principal level. Here is the projects that I'm working on. I see some gaps. I'd really like to develop this, and this. What can you give me? What can I work on? Where would you suggest I cultivate it? And so the next step after you've prepared the case and you've done your due diligence of the data, both internally in the organization, any resources that are there, and then externally, once you've prepared yourself, then when you go into the discussion, it is with the mindset of curiosity. It is with a mindset of partnership with that manager, supervisor, or whoever, whatever stakeholders you have in the room, and say, okay, so here's all the evidence, right? Here's what I've been up to. Here's the next level. What else do you need from me? And as I said, hopefully you're doing that regularly, not just on the day that you are asking for this promotion. Hopefully it's not a surprise. People that I see that show up and say, I'm so disappointed I didn't get the promotion. That to me signals a lack of preparation and or a communication mismatch between the supervisor and they were getting the can kicked down the road for months and months. The manager saying, yeah, sure. But they didn't actually mean it. And that data wasn't being conveyed to the individual that, oh, okay, wait a second. Maybe they don't actually have these future plans for me. Maybe there isn't an expansion happening. Maybe they're going to hire externally for this role that's going to come in and manage me. All the signs point to this. And often people are in denial about their situation. And I get it. It's hard to think, oh, I really want this promotion, but I don't think I'm going to get it. It looks like they're posting a role. I can tell my manager wants somebody with fresh opinions, which generally speaking means out of the organization. They're not really hiring. I mean, you'll get a sense, you'll have the spidey sense because all the data is pointing to it. You will have that inkling. And so don't bury your head in the sand about this. Be proactive and take responsibility. And I could say, okay, work with a coach because they'll keep you on track. And that's generally true. If you have external accountability, it helps. I notice the people that I get to work with, they kind of are checking in on the game plan regularly. But at the end of the day, I cannot, as your coach, force you to do anything, nor do I want to, because again, it's your responsibility. We can talk through different ideas. We can talk through roadblocks and things that are coming up. But at the end of the day, you are responsible for the life you're creating. And I know I can repeat it again and again in different episodes under the context of different questions I get in coaching. But that's such a core assumption that the people I see that thrive in coaching really are like the client I had this morning who just said, you know what, the biggest thing that's led to me flourishing is me taking full responsibility through talking about my situation with you. And that is the truth. So first step to getting a raise is taking full ownership over the value you're creating in your role. It's not just, you don't get a raise just because you've been somewhere a certain amount of time. You get a raise for increasing the value that you're delivering to the organization through the impact you're making in the role that you're in. And you need to demonstrate that. And so make the case for yourself. Use the data available to you, which is your current post, your current job, and the role and responsibilities listed, any projects you're on in the data, external roles that are similar to yours, the responsibilities that those people hold, the compensation levels within your organization and outside of your organization at your role level, and get your manager on board as soon as possible. It shouldn't be a surprise to your manager at that time point when the next promotion cycle is. Some companies have more set cycles for promotions than others. But if you have a promotion cycle, make sure you know that's upcoming and plan in advance, right? And a lot of companies will hire and promote on merit, right? So if you're delivering, as I said, 10x more value than what you were hired for, and you can convey that through the case that you've made for yourself, well, then why wouldn't they pay you? And sometimes if you're really trying to prove yourself and they're hesitant or don't have the budget or they're making it difficult, I mean, be curious and be creative about the compensation structure that you're proposing. So, depending on what you're willing to take, whether it's a commission-based structure, is it an equity agreement of some sort where you take ownership of certain amount of the company, get creative if, the salary isn't exactly the way. But, and here's a big but, regardless of what your company is saying, if you're getting the can kicked down the road and that's your feeling, and even if you're not, competitive individuals always have a second option. That's true in every single facet of life. The reason that sports players can negotiate better deals is because more than one team wants them. The reason that people in the dating world can negotiate a better partner is because they're a viable catch. They're an attractive catch in the dating world. They have prospects. And so the job world is no different, and people get comfortable. People like the health benefits, the perks. Companies do this on purpose. So remember, you are here to be out for yourself. Of course, act like an owner when you're in a company. Take full ownership of what you're working on. That's your personal reputation, and help the company thrive. It's in everyone's best interest for you to do that. Be for the team. But, another but, or we could say and, be for the team and look out for yourself. And that means having other prospects. That means looking out for opportunities down the road. It means networking and having conversations continuously while you're in a role, so that you're not complacent and you're not left just holding the bill when everybody scatters, right? I mean, when the market takes a downturn, if you've been building connections over the year that you've been somewhere, that's when you get the opportunity at the competitor that's thriving, or that at the client that's thriving, right? I mean, so many lawyers would go and be in-house counsel at firms that they counseled as lawyers in a big corporate firm because, well, they've built a relationship. So just like everything in life, and you can bemoan this fact or you can be aware of it and utilize it, you have to be on people's radar. You have to be on the map. And that doesn't start the second you need a job. That starts by crafting meaningful relationships in your industry across the board. I know people at ad agencies where they're on the client side, they're on ad side, they're media buyers. And so they sometimes work at a media company. I mean, depending on what your broader mission for your career is, you can make a great impact on both sides of the table. So what if you're not a client-facing person? Or what if you're not necessarily interacting with different people in the industry in your day-to-day role? Well, go and create those opportunities. There's a whole body of, I want to say literature, but there are books, lots of books. I mean, even my book, Memorable, where I talk about client interviews, you can use the same structure for informational interviews. And so if you're not doing informational interviews and getting to know other product managers, other people in product, or, other people in HR, other people in marketing, get to know different people in your profession, swap ideas. And back to tracking, and I know this isn't fun and people get upset with me, but you have to track these things. People just leave it up to chance, or, oh, I met some people at this convention or conference or in this online workshop. It's like, put it in a spreadsheet somewhere and follow up with people. I know it's hard. I'm not perfect at it, especially if you're making, definitely when I was in Founders Institute and in that accelerator, I mean, I was meeting with different people every day, hundreds of connections within that 6-month period, lots of people. And so keeping up with them is difficult. And that's why they invite you to build an email list. And maybe even as an individual, you have an email list that, you just send out interesting things in your industry. You're not selling anyone anything, but maybe you send out an interesting email, or you have a podcast like this, or you have some means of sharing what it is that you're working on and your area of expertise. If you like writing, maybe you have a blog if you don't like emails, but something that kind of keeps you on people's radar, updating your LinkedIn. And I know people kind of don't enjoy this component, but if you can do it in a way that you like the medium, then you are hedging your bets. And companies are hedging their bets. Companies, it's just business, right? They'll fire you if that's the best case for the company, and good for them, right? They should take care of the company. As a business, they need to make sure that the company is thriving, growing, has the best people possible, and that they utilize their assets accordingly. And if they don't have the assets to keep you on, they're not going to. So do the same for yourself as the company is doing for themselves, which is, this is great for a time. It might not be forever. And I think gone are the days of dedicating your whole career to one company, right? And just hoping and praying. And I've heard of many stories and know family members personally that kind of got the short end of that stick anyway, even after dedicating their whole lives. So just be sure to have your orientation toward yourself, what's in your control and what your responsibilities are, which are, again, making the case for yourself, looking at the facts, being very diligent about tracking the value that you are contributing, because it's on you. It's on you to convey it for this employer, but also down the road to showcase what it is that you've delivered. And especially if this doesn't come naturally to you to communicate about such things, having the data takes a huge load off for you to be convincing and be able to memorize everything or have great examples at your fingertips. It's like, if you have the data in front of you, if you have the projects and the results and the facts, figures in front of you in a conversation like that, then it's not about convincing. It's not about, can you memorize all these compelling facts? You have it right there in front of you, and you can have that collaborative discussion and ask questions like, I'm very interested in a director position. How do you see that unfolding over the next year and a half? What is it that you expect from me and need from me in order to reach this position in the next year? How is the company planning to grow their people? I noticed that, there's a really defined growth track for this, for the lawyers, but what about the support staff? I mean, look at your company and start asking questions of the manager, of the supervisor, that they need to go and answer. That's what they need to know. They need to know how to support your development when it is apparent that you're committed to developing. So do your part and then ask questions and get the data from the other side as to whether or not they're committed to your growth or not. And you will get that information very quickly. Again, whether they kind of fluff you off or they give you a true plan, and you'll see if they follow through on that plan month over month. So this stuff isn't maybe revolutionary, but the fact is most people even know this, but they don't do it, right? And so create a system for yourself that you will do it, both on the networking and building the professional network outside of your particular company, and also internally as you track the value that you're delivering, so that you can make a compelling case for yourself and get your manager on your side. They should want you to win, right? I mean, the best manager I ever had, she told me to do this right away. Track what you're working on, track your projects. And she was my biggest champion. And I'll always be grateful to her for really setting me up in that way and showing me when I had absolutely no idea that that was something I should be doing. So, sometimes you'll get a manager like that. But again, you can't rely on that person to be your champion. You have to champion yourself and show that you're the one stepping up to the plate. And if your manager isn't willing to, go to bat for you, then, managers above will probably see what it is that you're bringing to the table. If you're a shining star, your manager can only take so much credit for your position. Or, you make a move. And in any case, you're looking out for you while contributing to the team. And I think in that way, everybody wins. And the level at which people should be focusing on responsibility is it's correctly assigned, because again, you're not giving it up to the manager, the company, the industry, the economy. You are keeping the level of control that is appropriate for you, which is your actions, the way you approach your role. And you're taking the feelings out of the equation in the sense that you're approaching it from a data-driven perspective, which nobody can really refute as long as your data is correct. So I hope this has been useful in looking at a potential negotiation, compensation review, performance review, scope of work discussion, maybe promotion type of conversation that you'll have with an employer. And I hope you'll join me next time for other ideas from coaching sessions that really seem to help people with their reframe. And if you found this useful, please do like, subscribe, review. It makes a difference. And if you know a friend that would benefit from an episode like this, a friend that's, changing jobs or looking to step up and get a promotion or raise, please do share this with them. I think it's a really great mindset shift that just puts so much more power back in the individual's hands. And that's what we're aiming at, I think, isn't it? So I hope this has been useful. Take good care until next time, and I'll see you soon.